This is the Lunch and Learn overview for Kit 1 Theme D, the single silent E. To begin, this kit has some big ideas which might seem like old hand to you, but there's a lot more to the single silent E that we can talk to kids about and certainly teach them through this theme. To begin, of course, one way to show a vowel is long in a base word is to write a single silent E at the end of the word. Those examples there show how a short vowel sound changes both in meaning and in the length of the word when you add the single silent E. When you add a vowel suffix to a word that ends with a single silent E, the suffix replaces the E. This builds on what we've been doing over the course of this year, really, in adding vowel suffixes and what happens to that single silent E at the end. We touch on both of these ideas through this theme. This theme also teaches that spelling needs to be able to indicate a long or short vowel, since meaning can be changed by the length of the vowel. Again, spelling is concerned with meaning first, and that becomes a driving force for why we're working with single silent E in this theme. Before you begin, it might be good to review, of course, the basics of vowels using the vowel hand, as Melvin has taught us how to do. We want to focus on the names of the letters, not the sounds that they make, and then going over those vowels and indicating how we would code them if they make a long sound. When a vowel that is long says its name, we use a macron to code over the top. You can practice doing that with some of the words that Melvin provides. You can also do the opposite then with short vowels and finding some words that have the short vowel sounds, and we code those with abreve. There is a worksheet or a thinking sheet connected with this theme, which is a good one, especially for a little bit of formative assessment. You'll see on some of these words there's already been a vowel suffix added, and so figuring out what the base word is another thing that you can look for if you give this to your kids to tackle. Once you've done a complete review and you feel like you're ready to get into the theme, you can start it off by saying, and Melvin gives us this language, but I've underlined here what I think is very important, but again, getting at the heart of what we're trying to do here and unlearning some of our own past teaching around this concept. This is how Melvin suggests, and one way certainly you could introduce the theme. We use a final letter E as a sign that the last single vowel letter before it is long. When E is doing this job, it is silent. It doesn't represent a speech sound. We are also going to see that when we add a suffix that begins with a vowel onto a word that ends with a single silent E, the suffix replaces it. The things underlined, like I said, may be different verbiage than you've used before. Certainly calling it a single silent E rather than a tricky E or a magic E is one thing that Melvin certainly wants us to shift. Excuse me. Another thing that comes up in this theme that I think is incredibly important comes from a list of guiding principles that we looked at the beginning of the year, and that's the idea that sometimes spelling takes no notice of some sounds. Letters usually represent speech sounds, but they don't have to. Often they are representing no element of pronunciation. A single silent E, just by the fact that it's silent, falls into this category. It's a placeholder. At the beginning of the theme, when you saw the word slim and slime, the addition of the single silent E does something for us and shifts things both visually. We can tell that the word is longer. We can also tell that it's going to make the long I sound because the single silent E has been attached. But that E itself doesn't actually make a sound. It is silent. And it's not magical. It's serving a purpose. So this whole idea is something that I think is very important for kids to recognize happens in English spelling. Why does it matter whether a vowel is long or short? Of course, this has to do with meaning. Spelling is only interested in pronunciation and differences of pronunciation when they can affect what a word means. Because the length of a vowel in English can also change the meaning, the spelling system needs a pattern to show whether vowels are long or short. And one of the ways that it does this is to use the single silent E. That's key here because I think often kids assume that the only way to make a long vowel, or certainly the first way or the most common way, is the single silent E. But right from the get-go, we want to explain to them, and we've done this with looking at the E digraphs and those things, that single silent E is only one way that this can happen. And as I said before, we want to get away from calling this a magic E or a lazy E and instead call it a single silent E because our spelling system is tidy and does have a high degree of order. There's some activities that you can try within this theme to give students practice using the single silent E. You can change words from short A to long A using the single silent E, and then also work with those homophones. For example, with the word mad, if you add a single silent E to the end of that word, you get the word made. The homophone of that word is M-A-I-D, and so having students recognize all those different words and use them in a sentence will help to indicate their meaning and put the emphasis on meaning. Another way, of course, is to change the short E to a long E. You can change short U to long U, short I to long I, or short O to long O. And I have provided in this on this page here some example words that Melvin suggested you use for this work. If your kids are older and you know this is something that they are fairly strong at, you could, of course, just ask them to do this work. If they're younger, you can guide them through this work. What happens to the single silent E before suffixes? This is the second part of this theme where we practice again adding a vowel suffix to a word ending in a single silent E. The important thing, of course, is that it is single and it is silent. We know that younger children, in particular, will look at every E at the end of a word and assume that it is that single silent E, and so we have to help guide them into making sure it is before we make any shifts. The other thing to note, and Melvin has the beautiful flowchart here that we've used before but get more practice with, there are some things that come up. The two I've highlighted is the suffix Y in the word L-A-Z-E plus Y. The suffix Y must be a vowel letter because every time you add it to a word you create another syllable, and we know that every syllable of a word needs a vowel. So it must be a vowel suffix, and therefore it will have the same situation where it replaces a single silent E at the end. The other word to be sort of conscious of is the word judgment in this list, because although following the rules as we have learned them from this work, it should be spelled J-U-D-G-E M-E-N-T, it is often also spelled without the E there. And either one of those are acceptable, but we know from our work that the better spelling is the one that follows the rules we've been taught. What if the final E is not single or silent? I think this is an important one for younger kids and could be fun to work with the older kids. That practice of at times it isn't. The two examples down here and the 4 words provided on the right give you plenty of opportunities to have students create their own matrices, and to then, of course, take those matrices and make some word sums from those. We need to be conscious of not every E at the end of a word is a single silent E. It's a special category of E and then is treated that way. Things which might come up in this theme, as Melvin noted, are excuse me, when a single silent E is kept before a vowel suffix. There are words where we don't get rid of that single silent E. This is taken up more in Kit 5, Theme C, so if your kids begin asking those questions, you can dig into that kit to answer them. Other functions of a final silent E are to prevent a complete English word from ending in V. If you've taught the Learning from Love theme, you've already touched on this and your kids might remember it. The other thing is to prevent a final S from appearing to represent a plural. So taking the 2 words there, please, as in I'm making a plea, and please do this for me, P-L-E-A-S and P-L-E-A-S-E, the single silent E on the second word helps to differentiate it so that we don't think that it's plural. P-L-E-A-S is the plural of P-L-E-A-S. Plea. In the final string, G-E to represent the phoneme J, and to distinguish between words with close spellings but with distinctions in meaning. You can see those examples there. To distinguish between the word and prefix I-N and the suffix I-N-E, and to represent the final syllable L-E. I think what I've learned from this work today is that single silent E is a complex idea, but it's something that if we spend a little time on it and really dig in and investigate it, our kids can be more active with their learning around this idea rather than passive and making assumptions that the E at the end of a word is magic or tricky and just does this one thing, when in actuality the single silent E serves so many purposes and makes so much sense from the spelling system as a whole. So Good luck with this theme, and that's it.